Hi, everyone. Welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole on DomainSherpa. Jen and JT here. And as we say on DomainSherpa, all roads lead to domains. And in the reverse, our work with domains has us venturing all the time into different areas and topics, hence the jump down the rabbit hole.
This is our tech adjacent, digital asset, pop culture, tangent positive, anything goes monthly podcast with a dash of domain nuggets sprinkled on top for good measure. We will explore topics with our distinguished guests, touch on related news, and likely shower you with irrelevant trivia. You know who I'm talking about. I see you, Drew. I see you.
Oh, man, calling him out by name. And speaking of interesting guests to that end, today we've got leading domain attorney John Berryhill on the show again with Drew, with Ammar, maybe more, to talk about additional legal issues related to domains, talking about domain parking, Whois, stolen domains, and the situation at epic.com. And remember, if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can also watch the video version at DomainSherpa.com and on our YouTube channel at ds.tv. You can also check us out on Apple and Spotify and other podcast platforms as well. And as usual, big shout out to Dan.com, the #1 place in the world to buy and sell your domains with a special platform made for domain investors.
With that, 'tis time to get curiouser and curiouser while we jump down the rabbit hole on DomainSherpa, where all roads lead to domains.
All right, let's go. What's up, Sherpa Network? Thank you for tuning in today. My name is Jonathan Tenenbaum, a.k.a. JT, a.k.a. J-On, a.k.a. Sherpa Winfrey, the Mad Hatter, host and producer here of DomainSherpa, where all roads lead to domains. Today's show is part of our Down the Rabbit Hole series. Welcome to the Tea Party. As we say here on DomainSherpa, all roads lead to domains, and in the reverse, our work in domains has us venturing all the time into different areas, topics, hence the jump down the rabbit hole. So this particular show is co-hosted by Jen and myself, and we describe this as our tech-adjacent digital assets, pop culture, tangent positive monthly podcast with some domain stuff thrown in for good measure. Drew would like to see it be more domain stuff. We would like to go further off the reservation. We'll see. It's a constant struggle and balance. But today's special guest, we actually have a part 2. We've got my boy John Berryhill. You know, I gotta do the AKA, so you know, I don't want to do a full on introduction yet. But we had such a great show on the last month's show where we dove into some of the legal issues around domains and digital assets that we had to have him back. Plus, we had this big old topic list we spent all this time and we made it through one topic of like 10. So we are back at it. We are back here. So let me go ahead and dive right into our guests and do it official. Over to my right, I got my boy, John Berryhill, a.k.a. the Rainmaker, a.k.a. the legal Eagle Beanie Seagull, a.k.a. Lance Armstrong, a.k.a. John Berry, Hill Street Blues, a.k.a. John, the sweeter the Berryhill, the sweeter the juice. What's up, dude? Welcome back.
I found my thrill on blue.
On Blueberry Hill. Let's go. All right. So we were able to rope in somebody that you get to meet for the first time on today's show. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce him next. Coming live from leaving Las Vegas, it is my boy, Ammar Kuba, a.k.a. King Kuba, a.k.a. Danny Ocean, a.k.a. the even greater Gatsby. Do not chase an unworthy dream, a.k.a. Amarzan, a.k.a. Kuba Libre, a.k.a. LL Ammar J. What's happening?
I got one more, a.k.a. Who's that Berryhill guy? AKA Berryhill ain't no friend of mine. How about that?
Ooh, Berryhill ain't no friend of mine.
I didn't give a speech at your wedding, Ammar.
So, you know, but yeah, it's really great to be able to introduce you to, and because as we were on the show last time, you know, John was talking about the people he is not friends with in the space, including Braden. Who made a special appearance, came in and jumped down the rabbit hole mid-show.
Growing list after each show.
Welcome to the club, man. Welcome to the club. You know what I'm saying?
Lose some more today.
Yeah, no. After our last show, you know what I mean. Our friends list is getting cut down a little bit. Unfortunately, people don't like it when you keep it real with them. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Unfortunately, you can't handle the truth.
We're just here to tell the truth.
You can't handle the truth, Billy. Hit him with it.
I'll answer the question. You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You
handle the truth.
I'm a lawyer. I'm not allowed to do anything other than tell the truth.
There you go. There you go. That's because you took that Hippocratic oath, and we appreciate that.
No, we take the hypocritical.
The hypocritical oath. Lawyer, that's actually pretty good. Lawyers take the hypocritical oath. All right. With that, let's keep it moving on the AKAs. I got my co-host down below me. We got my girl Jen Sale, aka Aussie Osborne, aka Olivia Newton-Jen, aka Rockedow Dundee, aka Dingo Star, aka Melbourne to be wild, aka Sipping on Gin and Juice, aka Alice. What's up? It's like crazy late over there where you are. I know it's got to be it's like 4-hour time difference from the East Coast, right? Something like that.
Well, it's 1 a.m.
A dingo ate my baby.
Dingo ate my baby.
Close enough.
Here we go. Here we go.
We've already lost everybody from Australia from the last time we were on the show.
Shouldn't she be counterclockwise to you, though?
Exactly. Above me.
I used to do that to my assistant, Kristen. If we had to send a fax to Australia, I'd say, make sure you put it in upside down. Right. She would do it.
I was going to ask her to go in the bathroom and flush the toilet just to show everybody how the water circles the other way.
It does. And that is actually true. We joke around and make up facts that aren't actually facts, but that's true, right? Doesn't the water go the opposite direction in the toilet?
No, I don't stand there looking at the toilet and how the water goes down.
But I think that's
in
a
America
thing.
or Australia.
That's a thing.
Well, yeah. Well, it was on The Simpsons, so yes.
Everything on The Simpsons is true.
And not only that,
it just may not be true yet.
yes,
Exactly.
The Simpsons is prophetic.
So true.
It
Ladies
is.
don't use the toilet.
Like Kim Jong-un.
All right. Let's keep it moving, though, because I'm going to go ahead and I'm
flagged on everything. Stop.
FYI, bringing this back to domains, I actually own KimJongUn.com.
There you go. So somebody holler at your boy. Tell him.
Yeah.
We can get it cheap. We can get it cheap.
I've been waiting for him to bring a UDRP against me on that. I was like, you know what I mean? I feel like that would be sort of a feather in my cap.
Yeah.
Speaking
so
of
when
dictators,
Tokyo gets blown up, we'll know why.
Right. Speaking of dictators, I own SaddamHussein.com.
Yeah, he's dead. There's no fun. He's dead.
Wow. So you guys.
Axis of evil. We got to have the third one. Who's got the Khomeini of Iran?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I saw that Putin.net is on the expiry list on GoDaddy today. And I was thinking about it, and then I thought, I just don't need to go there. You know what I mean? That's the thing. You get poisoned on a park bench, and I just cause.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let somebody else take that hit.
It's 2 words, put in. It's a great name for any business that involves putting things inside of other things, like Australian women. I don't
Oh, it's gonna get good today. It's gonna be good today. Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelt.
We should have a little counter. Friends lost.
Billy, show the counter. Show the counter, Billy.
Negative. It's negative.
I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm not even mad. All right, let's keep it moving. Last but certainly not least, over to my left, I got my boy Andrew Rosner, aka Morpheus, aka the Dirk Diggler, Digital Assets, aka the Sniper, aka Drew. Drew got what I need, aka Never Gonna Give Drew Up, aka Blackbeard, the Domain Pirate. That's it. That's all I'm doing. I cut out like half of them because you said I did too many AKAs.
It's more gray now though.
Didn't I say Graybeard? Oh, I said Blackbeard.
No, you said black.
Graybeard. I think that's always a point of contention.
You can say salt and pepper. The women like that.
Oh, salt and pepper. Maybe that's another AKA,
In Australia, they like pepper and salt.
Okay.
Sorry, Australia.
Great. It's poor Australia. All right. So here's the thing. We did the show literally a month ago to the day, and we had this whole big old list. We didn't get through all of it, but so we're going to dive right back into the list and try to keep it moving, try to keep the topic somewhat short and try to get done on time. We will see how possible that is. Yeah. All right. So the thing I'm going to lead with is the thing that John said that the question you get asked the most by people, because we put this out into the Twitter sphere, into the universe and said, hey guys, we're bringing John back on the show. Please let us know any specific questions. And one of the questions that came up that you highlighted is something that you get a lot, which is, what is the safest way to own and keep a domain, right? So if you register, you buy a domain that you're buying for investment purposes, or maybe you got a business idea, but you're not ready to launch on it. What is the sort of safest way to protect it so that you don't deal with legal issues, you don't get hit with UDRPs or any other types of complaints? Is it a parking page, a blank page, a sales page, a page with little content? What is the advice that you give?
Okay. And the way I look at things is what is the safest way? It's not necessarily the most profitable way. It's not necessarily the highest traffic way. But if we're just optimizing for, what I see, and nobody sends me an email in the middle of the day that says, "Hey, John, I'd like to pay you to just tell you that everything's going fine and I'm not having problems." So,
you don't get those emails. I get those emails all day. They're just like, "Hey, status update. Everything's great."
Yeah, I actually, well, anyway, I did that one time. I said on a forum, nobody ever pays me to say everything's going well, and then I received a payment through PayPal with a note from somebody saying everything's going well. But I noticed that the final absorption of Uniregistry into GoDaddy is happening, and one of the things that's being lost in that is some of the answers to those questions, because the Uniregistry marketplace system wasn't built as something to be marketed to domainers. It was built by Frank Schilling for the purpose of managing Frank Schilling's domain portfolio. And many of the features that were built into the Uniregistry system were features that I had a lot of input into because of that very question. All right. And there are things you hear all the time. Don't park your domains because it'll converge to trademark meanings. Okay. So if you have a domain with the word tied in it, all right, the optimization systems are very good at not necessarily knowing, but gauging that Tide seems to have some kind of strong association with laundry detergent, right? And in the United States, Tide is the biggest selling brand of laundry detergent,
and it's also edible, right? Tide Pods and whatnot, because candy and shit pops up as well, right? So continue.
We just lost 3 more friends.
But this time to Tide Pods.
Eat your Tide Pods, everybody.
What I deal with most of the time, and the thing that most people are worried about is getting a UDRP. You could have a perfectly fine dictionary word, common expression, the tide rolls in, or something like that. Time and tide, waits for no man. But if you put it on automated parking, what will happen is the revenue generation maximization algorithm will say, "Oh, hey, detergent seems to match up with this really well." So you'll have, a nice page that says, Tide waits for no man, and washing machines, laundry detergent, all that good kind of stuff. And the basic question that we're trying to get to, that the panel is trying to get to in a UDRP, is, why did this person register this domain name? You can look at, if this trademark was on this date and they announced this, and you can go into all kinds of technicalities, but at the bottom level, it is a gut feel. Why did this person register the domain name, and is it credible that it had something to do with this trademark owner? Now, if there's usually not a lot of evidence for people that are in the domain secondary market, basically, you're trying to sell a domain because it has value as a dictionary word. Okay. I recently did a UDRP response in which, basically I said to the panel, because it's an obscure trademark owner on a dictionary word. And I said, started the UDRP response off by saying, this panel, I'm going to make 2 bets before going into my legal arguments. I'm going to bet, number one, nobody on this panel has ever heard of this trademark owner, or this word being used as a trademark, and everybody on the panel knows this is a dictionary word. Okay, and from that, a lot of times if it's just a dictionary word for sale, But where there is evidence of a parking page that has unfortunate results on it, that you didn't pick, the registrar put them there, it's a GoDaddy parking page, you didn't have any intention about it, your heart is pure, that's fine. But if somebody gets into your car because you left the keys in it and goes and runs somebody else over, you're going to be named in the lawsuit, because you were not careful in dealing with your car. All right. Ultimately, they hold people responsible for those parking results, even if it's, registrar parking, that a lot of people who, they were halfway drunk during the Super Bowl 3 years ago, they saw a commercial and they went and registered a domain name, and, they don't even, they forgot about it. It charges their credit card every year and it has parking results on it. There's sometimes we can't get to what the real story was behind, but we can get to, the objective evidence of what the parking is doing, and you will be held responsible for it, even if you were on a bender during the Super Bowl. So one of the things, though, that is most helpful in a UDRP dispute is that very question. Why did you register the domain name? You would like the use of the domain name, what is going on at the domain name, to reflect your reasons, the real value for the domain name. So, one of the things that was built into the Uniregistry control panel in the marketplace was a, sophisticated keyword, targeting system. Basically, you could choose categories, and you could nail that domain, time and tide to moon phases, oceans, stuff like that. Where if it was just like, well, what if it's just like a 3-letter acronym? We had a page.
You also could do exclusions. You could exclude specific things, which I thought was a very powerful feature.
Yeah. Now, the problem with that is that you will have people who will target the name to what they believe are high value PPC topics that are not relevant to the domain name, entity, roads, traffic, quality. So, if you could, but, the type of people that Uniregistry used to get were, sophisticated domainers. And if there was something funny going on, we could police it. Maybe it doesn't scale to the size of GoDaddy. Maybe GoDaddy could have a trusted special domainer program where, there are people that do take care of these, because the thing is, if you look at, I think there are 39 UDRP cases involving name administration, Frank's company that held the domains, and a couple of more involving LinkZ. Most of those, I would say, on the ones where we didn't win because the domain name predated the trademark, most of those were won on the parking results. There's a brand of sewing machine called Bernina, and Frank had Bernina.com or Burnett.com or something like that. The company was Bernina. Their machine is called Burnett, and it's a female name, and the page is parked to, baby names, female names, genealogy, that kind of thing. You can take that and say, this has nothing to do with a trademark for a brand of sewing machine. So parking was essential to winning domain disputes when it was appropriate. And again, I think with the demise of Uniregistry, that's something that's being lost. So then, the next question is, well, what about you might ask me, what about a for sale page?
What about a for sale page?
I'm glad you asked. I like to include you all in the conversation today.
Ammar, man, good job being quick on that one, because we're all like, I'm like, oh, he's true. I'm actually I wonder what's in the cup. Like, what's he drinking? Like, that looks really tasty. I'm like thirsty all of a sudden.
This one is lemonade, and this one is coffee.
Yeah, and this one is Everclear. All right. Continue. Sorry, John. Well, I don't even. What was the question?
What about a for sale page?
A for sale lander, and you could have hybrids. Of course, you could have. Uniregistry had parking results and click here to inquire, and people have all kinds of religious beliefs about that. But from where I sat, targeted parking was the gold standard. In fact, if you go back to 1999 and you look at Usenet archives on, there was an intellectual property discussion group in Usenet back in the day. And in 1999, both the ACPA and the UDRP were being drafted. And I was looking at these and I was thinking about, well, what about these domain speculators? And I posted a series of postings to Usenet back in 1999, 2000, saying, look, this thing is coming down the pike. And what you might want to do on your valuable domains is, at that time, sign up for affiliate programs, have affiliate programs where you could put specific products on the page or specific advertisers on the page, so that you would be using the domain name as a vehicle to publish advertising relevant to the primary meaning, the generic dictionary content, or relevant associations to the domain name itself. So this is something I've been pretty consistent about for 21 years. If somebody wants to, dig out my old Usenet stuff, there's, I did some interesting things when I was in grad school too. So anyway, thinking of other Usenet news groups. But with that going away or being inaccessible, and there are some parking systems where if you call them up, if you know them, say, hey, could you make sure that this is targeted to that, and you guys generally have that kind of influence. If you have a name park somewhere, you can do that. Other people don't. But I think somewhere there is someone running a parking system trying to figure out how to compete. And, if you come to me and show me that you are reviving a targeted parking system, that's, one of the things that can grow up through the forest floor around the GoDaddy consolidation that I had spoken about last month. For sale landers, all right, classically in the UDRP, the trademark owner sees a for sale lander, they put in a communication through it using a Gmail address. They don't use their company address. They don't, they actually hide the fact that they're a trademark owner. They'll inquire and you come back with, oh yeah, I'll sell it to you for, $20,000 or whatever. And then they take that email and say, hey, he tried to sell the domain name to us. All right. And it's classic. They'll just look at the for sale page and say, oh, he's trying to sell the domain name. And, overlooking the fact that the UDRP is pretty specific on offers to sell a domain name. It's, did you acquire the domain name for the primary purpose, of selling it to the domain or selling it to the trademark owner? And, simply responding to Joe Blow at gmail.com, who came in with a $8,500 offer just to make up a number. That does not show. That shows you're trying to sell it to some anonymous guy. And what's crazy in this recent UDRP response that I did was the registrar had implemented, automatic privacy across the board. And they said, oh, the domain registrant is trying to hide his identity. When we have all this correspondence where, oh, well, it looks like the trademark owner is trying to hide his identity. And in fact, they included in the emails that they submitted internal communications in the company with other people who had company email addresses, telling the guy with the Gmail address, well, say this or don't say that, or, it was just, pathological. But there have been a couple of UDRP decisions where they said, okay, well, sure, it's a dictionary word or it's a 3-letter domain name, but he wanted $20,000. And so that high a price, because these people have absolutely no idea what a domain name is worth. He wanted that high a price because of this trademark. And there's a panelist who has made himself somewhat famous for just that sort of reasoning. He has this magic ability to tell when a price is premised on the trademark. So here's the fix for sale landers. And I know that, and I don't receive anything for plugging anybody. I practice law. I don't compete in the domain space, and I don't, do advertising. But I will say I was very impressed to see the FD system recently implemented for sale pages where you can control a block of text. Now, I understand, and someone has informed me that there is this capability hidden within Dan, which has been absorbed into GoDaddy. And let me tell you the kinds of things that I have one domain name.
Can we give the example where they can see a good implementation of that?
Well, off the top of my head, it's I don't have one of the specific targeted sale lander, but let me just explain what I'm talking about. I have won disputes where basically there was a stock picture on the page, a stock photograph, and an inquiry form. In a decided UDRP case, Montaigne.com. All right. Montaigne is apparently an outdoor apparel manufacturer in the United Kingdom, which we learned about when we got the UDRP. And there was a picture on the for sale page of mountains. Montaigne is also an adjective referring to a mountainous environment. That picture was enough evidence of what was the intent, what was driving the value. Now, if you have a for sale page for some dictionary word, you can say, why not make a sales pitch? Why not? One of the problems that we have in the domain industry are people that genuinely don't know why domains are valuable. And you can say, this is a short, memorable dictionary word. This, tied in time, would be a great name for things like a surfing website or surf fishing or that kind of thing. Give examples of things the domain name would be useful for. If your business might benefit from this memorable dictionary word, let me know. And then, and before you do that, do some Googling and do a trademark search to find out what kind of trademark uses the domain name is being used, and make sure you don't hit one of those in your sales pitch. Don't say, oh, and it would be great if these trademark owners bought it, because that's the thing. And I realized that, you bought this name in the heat of an auction. You saw it was a dictionary word or it had a common phrase in it. It's not like you were like looking at trademarks and then looking at the auctions and making your decisions that way, because that's not why people buy, domain names. But making that sales pitch, having language on a for sale lander that is specific to the value of that domain name, whether it's a picture that is suggestive of what that dictionary word means, or whether it is, a bullet point list. Sometimes it can be very subtle. One of my favorites is hai.com, which if you go to, it has a sort of a Japanese art motif. It has the definition of hike in Japanese as meaning yes, affirmative, hike. And it has an email where you can contact them.
It's actually German for shark.
Yep. There you go. You could have a shark on it, eating Germans. You could have.
Now, there goes our German audience.
I think that's the next. I think that's the next big movie. Like Nazi sharks on that.
Going around the world, people, around the world.
But the point is, when you get to that argument in the UDRP of he tried to sell the domain name to us, it's like, well, no, he tried to sell the domain name because I'm certain, I will say without even looking, there is someone that has a trademark for HAI. Absolutely, that's true of a lot of 3-letter acronyms. Now, if it's IBM, that's a famous one, or VW. But something like HAI, yeah, I'm certain there's a trademark on it without even looking.
And John, is this like more specific to like your top level extensions? Because I know with .com.au, I've been advised not to necessarily say it's for sale. It needs to be like, this domain may be for sale, and then it also has to have PPC links on it to show that it's being monetized, and that I haven't bought it just to resell it. So I think, so I was wondering, like with different extensions, did the different rules apply?
Yeah, so some CCTLDs, have their own rules. I mean, for example, in .in, You're not allowed, according to NICSE, the .in registry, you're not allowed to sell .in names. Do people do it? Yeah. But actually, if NICSE gets informed that someone's selling a .in name, they'll go back to the registrar and say, you have to cancel this registration. And I know that Australia had a number of rules around company names. It has to correspond to your company registration and so forth. Australia is one of the few places I have not done a CCTLD dispute. I don't know if it's because Australians all get along well together, or they're basically all expected to be thieves, but they don't seem to, and probably because there's a number of good domain IP folks working in Australia who probably deal with those better than I would. But certainly, there are different CCTLD rules on parking, on use of the domain name, and different, slightly different outlooks on the dispute mechanisms. The UDRP is different from the UDRP in some minor regards, and that goes for .couk with the nominate dispute proceeding as well. But at their core, the main point is whether you are parking the domain, whether you are using the domain, for anything. Once the UDRP is filed, it is a credibility contest, and there is nothing that beats having objective evidence of your intent before you need it. Okay. And even back in the Usenet days, I was harshly treated by an intellectual property lawyer who said, well, basically, you're just trying to teach people to cyber squat, because you're having them manufacture this evidence of good faith intent, and it's like, all year, every year, I have a little box where I keep all my receipts for money that I spent on my business, because at the end of the year, I'm going to file my taxes and I'm going to say I spent this much on my business. Now I have during that year, I saved a box of receipts so that if necessary, I can prove that that's what I spent on my business. Same deal with your domains. If you're not cyber squatting, then you would like to have there to be evidence of your good faith intent, why you think the domain was valuable before that dispute comes in. This may be for sale. All right.
Yeah, but I think that's it. And look, and I think, and just we got to move along to other topics too. So I don't want to just keep us too tied up on one, but I think, the short answer is no. And like you said, this was the one that you get asked the most, and it came up in response to us saying, "Hey, you got any questions for John?" I want to know who the IP attorney was, though, that was talking that smack. We're talking about keeping receipts, let's see, let's name some names up in this piece. But no, I'm kidding. So, but I think let's encapsulate this then for folks. I think, like you said, objective evidence of good faith intent to register, use, own a domain. In line with the way you've sort of described it, I think makes a lot of sense. And obviously, not all terms are created equal. So those that could have potentially, some trademark claims on it, sometimes you're not going to know what some people, we've seen people come out of the woodwork and decide that they want to start a business on a brand on a domain you might already own. And then they, say, hey, this was a big topic that we talked about last show. And then it's like, how do you manage that? And they say, oh, they don't really, they've just been squatting on this name. I really have a real intent, I'm the real owner of this brand now because I had this idea and I want to use this term. And how dare they have the .com domain when I should be the one who has it? But then you get into
that's when I give them I double dog dare you. That's the response to that one.
I
triple
dog dare you. Put your tongue on the frozen pole.
when you write back to them. All right.
Yeah. Drew is surprisingly responsible, even to the even to the folks that I would be like, you don't need to respond to that. And he's like, already did. CC'd you on it.
You are writing what will be Exhibit A.
Did you have to threaten to run him over with your car?
No. I am extraordinarily conscious of the fact that everything that I write will be used against me in some form of court or forum.
He hopes it does.
I write it with the full intent
Yeah,
Well,
and that's another opportunity, by the way. If you just have a
Absolutely.
blank for sale lander, people say, "Hey, is this domain for sale?" And you say, "Oh, yes, this dictionary word referring to the effect of the moon on the oceans, is very valuable to people engaged in maritime activities, and therefore I think it's worth, $3 million."
Which, I mean, hey, trademark or not, I mean, tide.com is a fantastic domain name, and that actually wouldn't be such an outrageous price for that domain. Just in the fact that it has a valuable one-word dictionary word, like very much like you said, that, has other meaning well beyond, what it might be attributed to in the minds of certain consumers or what have you. But
before we move on, because I actually want to bring up something that John alluded to earlier about the Whois. And because the UDRP that I recently got, they did claim what John's talking about here, that I was hiding. And it was because when the domain transferred from Uni to GoDaddy, GoDaddy automatically puts privacy.
Sure.
None of my names have privacy by default. I, in fact, do the opposite. I prefer to show the Whois, right? Show my contact information. But that's a double-edged sword with GoDaddy, because I just got a letter in the mail for one of my names to my home address. That's at GoDaddy because they showed my Whois info, my account info as my Whois. But that's a separate issue.
Wait. So let's talk about that for a second. So when they, we'll go ahead, finish your point, but then I want to talk about the unmasking. I think that's also an interesting topic that we can get into.
Right. So the reason, what I'd like to ask John is, I think what he's going to say is it's better to show the Whois, right? But is that correct? Is it better to not have your domain name's privacy, and can the privacy? Because in this case, they did try to use that against me, but we were able to show why it wasn't my choice actually, and I wasn't hiding. But
with the liability,
in the case of, let's just say it was privacy protected, is that a de facto? Is that a bad thing, right? For some people, they don't want to show it, right? So what's the best way for Whois? For instance, I use domain administrator as the name, but I have a proper address, a proper email, and a proper phone number that all resolve and all get to me. But it just doesn't have my name. It has my company name. So it says domain administrator, Afterthought Inc. Right?
We do the same. Domain admin, company name, address, phone number.
So is that okay? Number one. And number two, what about if somebody does prefer privacy? Is that a problem?
Yeah, I've never been a fan of using Whois privacy, and there are things that are appropriate for different people. And actually, through some registrars right now, you don't get a choice, because the safe route with the ICANN temporary specification and GDPR is just to redact it all. And
that was my understanding, that with the liability of GDPR,
but then how did I get this letter?
The by default is privacy at least to the registrars that I use.
Yeah, and look, so I was obviously with web when we did, when GDPR was enacted. So, it was a big question of how do we want to handle it. We were also working with Tucows and Enom and, through the through Namejet and all that good stuff. And everybody had a different opinion as to what they wanted their default to be. I think that, I think folks felt like, all right, if we're going to err on the side of caution, without question, we'll put everybody under privacy. Then it was like, okay, maybe we just put the people under privacy that are located in Europe, right? We're talking about GDPR and even before the California, legislation happened, but the CCPA. But then I know some registrars were kind of like, well, if people pay for privacy, right? So if we go ahead and make privacy the default for everyone, well, then, is there a way to differentiate, GDPR privacy versus, some sort of privacy?
That was the best when the registrars were like, well, we're going to offer super privacy.
Super privacy, exactly. Extra private privacy,
Yeah, and then GoDaddy took it a step further, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, this privacy thing is kind of cool, because now nobody can actually contact the domain owners. They got to come through us.
Well, Exactly. And that's what I think is really interesting in the space. And what people lose sight sometimes, it's not always the most simple thing or just, oh, that's got to be that. Because like you said, then they recognize like, oh, maybe we may lose a little bit of our privacy revenue. But now all of a sudden our aftermarket revenue is going to increase because no one can reach our registrants without us. And therefore, we now become the go-between, and we're going to take a 10, 15, 20, 25% rip on
in the world that
number just keeps going. Number keep going up.
You could use this as a perfect metaphor for something that's a current event, which is the collapse of the banking system. And you have basically the Fed is ICANN.
Here comes Drew with the financial news.
Well, that's exactly, and he's just been waiting. He's like, "Wait, can I get in now? Can I do it now?"
It's actually more societal. This is like ICANN is the Fed, the banks are the registrars, and the consumers are the depositors, the domain registrants are the depositors. And it's like, well, if we collapse all of these banks, now they have to come through us. Right? Us being a small number of large banks that are directly tied to the Fed. And it's quite an interesting, sort of evolution of how that happened with, registrars and how it's now seemingly happening at the banks. It's a consolidation of power. It's happening everywhere you look in life.
A lot of consolidation. Yeah, no, Drew was just waiting for the in. He's like, we make some random offhanded comment. He's like, that reminds me of the collapse of the banking system. Let's talk about it. And
are fractional domain interests FDIC insured? Because that's where my whole retirement is.
Absolutely not.
But let John finish on the conversation about the Whois privacy.
No, I hadn't even gotten started.
Yeah. We're going to get through at least 2 or 3 more topics. So this is topic number 2, talking about Whois privacy. And, what should the default be kind of based on your,
Yeah, let John answer the question.
I want to talk about John answering the question, and I want to continue to talk about the topics, and I want to talk about talking. Fine, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
For the next hour, I'll be talking about Whois privacy because I can. Oh boy, where to begin? I have never been a big fan of Whois privacy because it does provide what is more or less of a zombie argument in UDRPs where they say, oh, he was trying to hide himself because of a very early case involving a company in Australia called Telstra. And the Telstra case is the most cited case in UDRP jurisprudence. Everybody likes it because it's Telstra versus nuclear marshmallows. Ha ha, the cyber squatter had a funny name.
Nuclear marshmallows. That's gonna be the name of the show, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were like 10 factors. They said, it's a really famous, unique, distinctive, inherently, fanciful mark that, somebody registers Telstra. We know why they were doing it back in that time. But they also, did like 5 other things. And one of them was bad Whois data. They had fake Whois data or something like that. And they were trying to, then everybody piles on and says, oh, well, if it's, fake or privacy Whois data, then it's cyber squatting. It's just something that people throw in as a factor. At this point in a UDRP response, you just say, hey, it's Whois privacy. In fact, the UDRP was revised a couple of years ago. And if you look at there's the UDRP and then there's the UDRP rules, and you got to look at those 2 things together. If you look at the UDRP rules, it even says that the order of events, the registrar is to be notified by the UDRP provider, and the registrar has 2 business days to make any updates to the Whois data, such as removing a privacy service, and moving on. And it's particularly galling because WIPO gets a UDRP complaint, notifies the registrar sends back the underlying registrant information. WIPO then invites the complainant to amend the complaint or say whatever else they want to say now that they know the guy's name. And then the proceeding moves on. And then, you show up, you hire a lawyer, you show up and you're, going to file a response, and they're arguing, oh, he's trying to hide himself. And it's like, that's just, it is written into the UDRP how privacy services are supposed to work. But there are panelists who don't even keep up with rule changes, in the UDRP. So it is an argument that gets made. It is easy to take off the table by using real Whois information. Real Whois information, which means one of two things. I'd like to see either a real person's name in the registrant information or a real company's name, excuse me, or a DBA in the.
For those of you who are only listening and not watching, John has decided to flip off the audience because he's like, fuck y'all. Go ahead. Continue, please.
Or domain administrator with the company. And actually, that when you have a company, it's preferable to do it that way, because one of the real issues with domain registration data is this domain name registered to Jim Bob, or is he registered to ABC Corporation? Jim Bob might be an IT employee and so forth. And it is unfortunate that registrars and for historical reason, there has been no distinction made between, is this domain name registered to this individual or to this business? And that gets into problems when you have rogue employees who go off, or upon whom the liability falls. I know that Marchex used to have an IT guy who was identified in the registrant field, and so this guy, he's just an IT professional.
Brendan Menheim, what was it? Menheim?
Brendan Height or something like that.
Yeah, Brendan Height.
Yes.
Brendan Height.
Yes.
Brendan Height. Yeah.
Right.
He was a real guy, though. He was a real guy.
But then he was still in there like long after he was gone.
Yeah, and what's crazy is we have realized that digital privacy is important, and every time that Brendan Height applies for a job or tries to get a promotion in his company, if he goes to get a loan, all right, people will look and they say, "Oh, well, you've been involved in."
You are a serial cyber squatter, Brendan.
The thing is,
Brendan.
Oh man!
Even if you have a UDRP filed against you and you get named, and the panel finds in your favor and said it was frivolous reverse domain hijacking, your name lives in this WIPO decision forever.
Yeah.
And people have come back to me and said, "Is there any way to get rid of that?" And it's terrible because you weren't found guilty of anything, but because, and I've started asking for this where appropriate. I've had people that, one was a realtor, who had legitimately had a domain name and didn't want, potential clients Googling her name and saying, because people come back to me and say, "Oh, well, John, but it says they won and it says it was frivolous." And it's like, no, it's 12 pages long. It's from the World Intellectual Property Organization. It has lots of legal terms. It says that some company said this person did something bad. You think people read these things or understand them?
Oh yeah. Just in the results alone, they see name versus name, and it's like, oh, okay, this guy's tied up in stuff, and it's like, that's noisy. And I've got 20 job applicants for this job, and I'm looking for reasons to effectively cross people off the list quickly. And this guy has a lot of hair on this dog. You know what I mean? So
I'm doing it. I have a UDRP pending case right now for a guy who is the head of IT security at a publicly traded company. And it is a domain name that is a variation of his last name that he has kept for, a number of years personally. But yeah, at some point, he's going to have to explain to management and to the board of directors why their head of IT security is somehow involved in a cyber squatting dispute. And it is the one of the craziest UDRPs I've ever seen. The complainant was 12 years old when this guy registered the name. Okay, so I mean, he didn't. He like I had this one.
He wants his $2. Yeah, I want my $2. He's a kid from Better Off Dead.
But it was that was 20 years ago. Now he runs a law practice in Florida, adopted this as a trademark, and he wants it, and so it's like, oh yeah, okay, so. In the response, I said, obviously what happened here is, in 2000, this guy registered the domain name while, of course, the complainant at 12 years old, he dreamed of one day growing pubic hair and having a domain name. You like the way
By the way,
I did that right on cue.
by the way, shout out to Berryhill here. One of my favorite things about John as an attorney is that he's not afraid to go there.
I'm a huge fan of that too. I mean, we're both obviously we're reformed attorneys ourselves or recovering attorneys or however you want to call it, and we can appreciate that when you're going through filings and you're going through court documents and you actually have an attorney who has a sense of humor but is able to frame it in a way that it makes sense within the argument to know like when to do that. Is like I'm a big fan, so I would agree.
John, can you show me that picture of Zach again? Because I wonder if when you're writing the retort, if you say no, you say to yourself, would Zach write this?
Yeah.
Yes. Big shout out to Zach. What's happening?
JT, we've got.
I do have some other evil influences.
What am I supposed to do, Jen? Oh. Oh, yo!
Nice.
I recognize that, Abe. Shout out to Alan.
And we may know this character.
Oh, look at that! Shout out to Morgan. You got all sorts of NFTs on your jersey. Oh, Sugar Shane. That's actually Colonel Whitenfur right there. That's Colonel Whitenfur.
As I learned, what was interesting was that the company that prints the jerseys came back to us and said, "Do you have the permission of these Bored Ape owners to put them on the shirt?" I thought that was kind of interesting.
Ooh, I like it. Let's go. Let's get some IP enforcement up in here. She'll put some respect on these apes. All right, Jen is giving me the hey guys, like we got to keep it moving. So all right, So the short answer, right? Because I like trying to condense these things down to actionable advice.
Real information.
Real information is the rule of the day.
Keep it real. Keep it 100.
I like keep it a buck. Let's
keep
go.
it 100.
And and I think it's also an interesting thing about the whole company versus the individual. And I do think that that's important. People, we see it all the time where somebody they hire someone to design their website. That's who goes and registers the domain. And then, you're dealing with trying to chase down a webmaster when, that's not technically who the quote unquote owner is, but it's the owner of record. So, all sorts of messiness ensues. So, I think that's an important piece just around your business. Just kind of like you said about collecting your receipts. I mean, I don't collect paper receipts. Do you still collect paper receipts on all your payments and stuff? Like, John, do you keep the box of paper receipts for tax purposes?
Do I collect paper?
I'm trying to go digital, man. We're going digital out here.
MediaOptions is the industry's leading domain broker specializing in domain acquisitions, high-value domain sales, and domain name consultation. As pioneers and thought leaders on the subject of the domain aftermarket and domain name value, plus through their clear domain acquisition service, MediaOptions offers startups and established corporations an unparalleled scope of high-value domain options, providing access to domain names and curation technologies not available elsewhere. MediaOptions believes in the power of a great domain name and is dedicated to helping you obtain yours. Call or email today to put a domain to work for you.
All right. All right. Well, let's get into the next topic because we're going to actually get through more than we're going to get multiple topics on today's show. I'm
exactly. So we've kind of almost hit the hour mark, which is crazy. So I was saying, I just messaged JT and I said, I think we're going to have to do a speed round for some of these topics, and we're just going to have to
be tough.
Speed
rounds are going to be tough.
All right, I'm going to get coffee.
I was going to respond. I don't know.
Oh, God.
I don't know if that's
leaving to get coffee. What?
No. It's right there. Relax. Keep talking. I'm listening.
Did you just tell me to relax?
You say chill, honey bunny. Chill.
I was
chill, honey bunny, like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
I was mansplaining.
I felt that real hard.
That's what she said. Sorry.
I knew.
Oh, no.
Okay, you can't do that and not expect me to react.
Hey,
quick hits. I'll give you quick hits.
Oh gosh!
You can't put it out there and not let me. You know what I'm saying?
Look, I set it up for you. Okay,
thank you.
That's what a good co-host does.
That is.
Okay. All right.
Vibe.
Okay, so are we going to just? I think we just run through these and just try to give some kind of minimal explanation, which is going to be difficult with some of these topics that people have shared with us. And shout out to the person that did ask us about what's the safest way to hold on to your name. I don't know if you have their username there, JT, but we can shout them out a bit later. Okay, so
I will find it.
Some of these usernames are very strange too, John, so I'm warning you. Okay, so at Flan_TS, this is just going to be silly. Kent Shackleton, legal aspects of epic.com meltdown he would like us to discuss. So a couple of points regarding Epic would be discussing some of the issues over at Epic, such as non-payment on domain marketplace sales, and then also what happens to your domains when a registrar goes out of business. So I think if we can keep this to like a 5 to 10 minute kind of section.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, okay,
epic fail. But yeah, let's talk about it though, because I mean, obviously, this matters. I mean, Epic had made pretty good inroads, especially in the domain investor community, and then introduced this idea of master bucks.
John's going to jump out his chair. Just let him rip.
Yeah, yeah. So let's go. What do you think? Like, what's
Epic was a pioneer in embezzlement as a service.
Man,
Next,
you can make an argument that Epic started the entire shitcoin industry. They are so far ahead of the curve on shitcoins. It's like they were a decade ahead.
Let me say this about Epic. I like to try to be helpful. If you are one of the many people dealing with issues with Epic, there is if you get taken by a Nigerian scammer, all right, and eventually you stop, you realize what's going on, and you've been scammed out of thousands of dollars by a Nigerian scammer. One of the things that
there goes Nigeria.
One of the things, or a 419 scammer of any kind, yeah. I mean, scammers come from, the best of places, don't they? Like, Lisbon. Anyway, several months later, you may receive a further contact from the special financial police of wherever, who will inform you that they have caught the scammers. They looked through their data. They found out that you've been scammed, and they'd like to help you recover your money. Okay? Mm-hmm. Those people are second-level scammers. All right? Basically, the first scammer, the first scam got played on you. So now we're going to play the second scam on you, and that is pretending to help you. So without going into a whole lot of detail, people who have been scammed by Epic may or may not be contacted by persons who are not registered licensed attorneys, whose interests are not particularly clear, and who want to obtain information from you about your dealings with Epic, and they will make vague promises of trying to get you help of some kind. The aroma of this activity has struck me personally, in my opinion, as being very similar to the second level scammers that come along. Now, I've had people come to me and look, Epic is a company in Washington State. I'm licensed in Pennsylvania. I live in beautiful Newcastle County, Delaware. I am as far away from the Western District of Washington or the King County courts as you can get. I have no interest in being involved in legal disputes in the state of Washington. So I have looked for, people who are reputable in the field of, financial transactions and business law in Washington. And I've referred people, to attorneys in that area. But here's the thing. I think that we all kind of understand that a lot of money went missing, and that there is the Epic was run. Their current president refers to it as, there was like an unfortunate commingling of funds, which means we were taking money out of what we were calling escrow and basically running a Ponzi scheme. All right, fine.
SBF.
Now, there's all kinds of illegality involved in it. People are like, well, why is no one suing? And one of the reasons, why no one's suing, and people could, get together and go to an attorney. Do not join together with some anonymous guy on some forum who says, hey, I want to get a bunch of people who've been ripped off together so that we can do something. It's really not a good idea. And your communications with people who aren't attorneys are also not, confidential. But here's the thing. When a lot of people come to me and they say, I'm being sued for $100,000. The first question I ask is, do you have $100,000? And they say no. And I say, well, I got some good news for you.
Oh.
We're not going to lose $100,000. So, you could sue. It costs money to sue. People are like, oh, why don't attorneys? I mean, maybe you can get an attorney to do it on contingent fee, but here's the deal: you're coming to me and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to spend the next, 100 hours of my life trying to get you money from somebody who probably doesn't have it. There's only so much you can do. If ultimately you would have to, find a way, which may not be too difficult, to go after the considerable personal assets of individuals who were responsible for those misdeeds, which may be a more appropriate route. But it takes a long time, to convert, someone's house with their new kitchen cabinets into into cold hard cash.
I feel bad for the one lady who I forget her name. But I mean, the name that was sold for, I think, $100,000.
Kathleen Kalaf, or what I believe is the.
I mean, it was a good domain too. I don't remember the name, but it was a good domain.
Yeah, and that was like her retirement money.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the story. I don't know. I don't know her, but that's the story.
Yeah. There's definitely what I've seen online and on some of the platforms. There's definitely been like innocent people caught up in this rubbish, and that's absolutely terrible. I'm just going to answer this like super quick and move on to the next topic because we're already hitting an hour right now. The second question was, what happens to your domains when a registrar goes out of business? Well, as someone who just actually wound up one registrar, we were managing and operating a couple of registrars. And we were like, okay, we just need to consolidate. This is crazy. Why have we got multiple registrars? So when a registrar goes out of business or shuts down, basically that registrar will nominate another registrar to take on any domain names that currently exist in that registrar that's getting shut down. And ICANN and the registries all sort that out. It's pretty seamless these days.
But that's when it's all copacetic and everybody's friendly and doing it.
Right. Yes.
In this case, if it's a forced shutdown or something else, then that's what happened with Registerfly, if I recall.
And do we have any concerns about if the renewals, like if a customer pays for a renewal?
Well, that's happening.
The renewals are actually not getting then paid at VeriSign or with ICANN.
That is happening.
Yes.
I'm an investor in a portfolio that's happening and the guy's renewing, and they're having issues with I don't even know if it's an issue of them not paying VeriSign. I think they're just like, I think GoDaddy may be throttling them too. Like they can't renew certain TLDs, and they're having technical issues. So stuff is trying to be renewed, but it's not. It's like there's some issues in the code, I think. So
can you transfer out? Can you get your names out?
You can transfer out.
That is.
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say dumpster fire?
Well, you're also assuming that the registrar, the failing registrar, had good enough data hygiene so that the registrar undertaking for that registrar, will be able to sort out whose domains are whose. And again, we come back to real Whois information.
We're off the reservation, folks.
Oh my God, I wish I had a mic.
That's it. We've lost. The train has left the tracks.
Okay, moving on to the next topic.
We are barreling straight through the woods now in the train. But okay, so go ahead. Continue. Well, continue your thought. Joe.
I'm in my second marriage too, and I always tell some of you have met my lovely wife MJ, and I always tell her, my second marriage is so good, I can hardly wait for my third one. It'll probably go
Third
south.
time's the charm, baby. Well, but the point you were making is that also, right, like, assuming that everything is right, because it's what level of sort of dumpster fire are we at, right? It's like there are clearly issues with the funds that were tied into these master bucks and the payments being made to people selling domains. There are issues with people trying to renew their domains. Right. And the question is to how the data was, people have, what rights do people have to their stuff, and how do they unwind and deal with this stuff?
Well, also, like, where does ICANN sit in all of this? And, like, let's say they are defaulting on their registry balances and they're not funding those balances.
That's between them and the registries.
That is. But still, those registrants want to know that their assets are still... Oh, yeah.
So why is anyone not transferring all their domains out right now?
So I was going to bring that up. I do think there's
some reason they're there.
There's some level of caveat emptor here, because I do think for whatever reason, there are people that just continue to leave their names there and continue to support them.
So
and that's
we have
choice.
Clients.
That's their choice.
I don't even want to say clients. We have people who have come to buy a domain from us who think that Epic is the bee's knees. And they think, this escrow.com company, we won't deal with them. But Epic, they are just wonderful. And I would be delighted to conduct this transaction through Epic. And I'd say, if you were paying me $4 billion for this domain name, I wouldn't do it through Epic. But I don't know what it is. Somehow Rob Monster has cast a spell on some folks that just, no matter what, how big the dumpster fire gets, they want to jump in. They believe that there is a pot of gold at the bottom of the dumpster fire.
They definitely, they really, him and, I guess it's him, but probably some of the team, they've engendered loyalty.
It somehow is religious. People are religiously, they're zealots for Epic,
zealots,
for whatever reason.
Zealots.
It's interesting, though. I mean, it's such a great way to demonstrate Darwinism. Like, anyway.
All right. Well,
look, we don't even have to go there, right? We don't have, but let's just say I think some people choose to continue to do business there, and that's their choice. But they should do that. They should choose with eyes wide open, knowing that there are these issues and potential further issues, and that's their choice. If they don't want to do anything about it, that's up to them, right? Like,
Epic had innovative services. They had low prices. They did have the personal attention of the CEO. There was a lot in that, and people, it costs money to move their domains out. I had no idea. For example, one of the things that Epic did recently was they changed the post-expiration renewal time. Okay. And I had no idea, having, been in the ICANN world and served on some of the working groups that developed, the domain name lifecycle policies. I had no idea there were people that then intentionally build that into their calculations that, I can decide not to renew a domain, for 35 days and then renew it on that 35th day, so that I'm paying my bills as late as possible, just so maybe, it might sell in that period of time and I still have it. And Epic changed the number of days that people could do that,
with no notice.
The data, knowing they had the data in their hand. They know how many customers go out to 39 days and renew it 39 days and have their own systems for keeping track of it. And then, the period of time got shorter. And once domains expire under the terms of Epic, it's those things that, what's yours is mine and what's mine is mine.
Yeah.
I do think, like you said, Ammar, caveat emptor, right? When you're dealing with a situation like this, especially for folks in the domain space, because some folks, are going to continue to use these services, even though, there's sort of this cloud of stuff. I mean, and if they're trying to make it right and try to make it work, I mean, credit to those folks that are putting in that time. But man, it is pretty messy in the meantime. So, all right, well, let's go. Let's jump into so Ali at May Von L tweeted, notice some logos on Squadhelp look like intellectual property infringement. Who carries that liability? So this is interesting.
So Billy, if we can show those images too, we'll put them up on the screen.
Though, right?
Yeah.
We touched on this, and the next one. Well, so I think we have time to kind of speed round two topics. This one I want to talk about real quick, and then I want to talk about Andy Booth had a tweet about stolen domains, which I think was also interesting. So I think those two we can kind of do quickly. We have some questions around AI and stuff that I think is that's a separate show, probably all into itself.
Too big.
And then some other stuff, but I think these we can kind of hit really quick and talk about it. So in this case, right, so you've got some of these services that create logos for landing pages for sale landers and things. What happens if they're, I don't know, have we seen an issue where somebody's brought a claim, a trademark infringement based on a logo on a lander? And if that was the case, how would that shake out?
Well, I don't know the case, but I know that like about 2-3 years ago, there was a case that was sort of making the rounds that was based upon somebody having a logo on their parking page or landing page, so to speak.
So then I guess, the way that I would interpret it, so it would involve reaching out to Squadhelp, right? And saying, hey, look, you put this logo that now has got, now we with the royal we including them, we're subject to this UDRP that you've roped us into, and hope that they do the right thing.
I don't even think it would be a UDRP issue. I think it's more like a copyright infringement issue when it comes to the logos, wouldn't it be, John? I think
no, but it's also UDRP.
Yeah, it's both.
The example they gave,
Sephora and Sephora. Yes. Right.
And so I think, John, I don't know if you saw that logo. It does look similar, and the domain name is similar.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one's not going to fly, and it's funny because people always accuse lawyers of they'll tell you they'll send you a 10-page letter and say maybe once in a while there's an easy question. I had two cases in parallel a number of years ago involving the letter U and the word health, and one was a .org and one was a .com or .net or something. Anyway, they were two parallel UDRP cases brought by, I believe, the University of Miami Health System, which called itself UHealth or whatnot. And the University of Miami has a logo that is like orange and green or something like that. Okay. The only difference in these two cases, all right, they both domain names had the letter U and health, which could be, lots of things, right? U health is, back in the day, that was a great name. They had parking. They both went to parking pages. The parking page on one of them had actually the colors green and orange on it. Okay. And I think, and the domain registrar had no idea. I think it was like GoDaddy colors at the time or something. But that was enough to tip that scale that I was talking about earlier. So yeah, things that look like similar logos. There's a terrible case with ARM I believe CO or something like that, where it was one of those pages and it had a logo on it. And the panel, what was crazy about it was the panel said, oh, and it has a logo that's similar to the other logo. And it's like, you look at the two of them, you're like, no, it doesn't. But in any event, yeah, sure. And as far as who's liable, if I, hire someone, to do work for me and I am going to, put it on my website, I will get, hopefully from them, a contract of some kind that assigns me the rights in the artwork.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, gosh.
Barton Pollock again?
You know,
I
and
want my
look,
keys
whoa,
back.
down the
I want
rabbit
the
hole.
keys
Look
back.
who it is. Look who's arrived.
and one of the things you like to see, one of the things you don't like to see, right? But one of the things you like to see is an indemnification that the artist represents to you. This is original work and whatnot, and I indemnify you. But again, at the end of the day, an indemnification is only as good as the ability of that person to back it up. If you paid somebody in a Southeast Asian island country 10 whatever tokens in order to give you this, and they give you back an indemnification, if you get sued, ultimately you are publishing it. When it comes to copyright issues, copyright is about copying, displaying, performing. There's a whole bunch of gerunds that you can do to violate a copyright. And so yeah, I mean, you as the domain owner are ultimately, you are the platform publisher. You can get other people to make promises to you if you hire a reputable agency that has insurance in the US to do your artwork, and you have an indemnification, then maybe your indemnification is worth something. But that's why people pay $100 for a logo versus $2.
Just ask Kim.com who's responsible.
But so John, so what you're actually saying is that the owner of that particular property / asset, being the domain name, is responsible for if they end up using a logo that's potentially infringing upon a copyright, whatever, trademark. That's on them. It's not on necessarily Squadhelp because they created it and gave it to them. Or is Squadhelp in any way liable for selling that logo that is infringing to them?
Oh yeah, they all are. You don't have to choose. If I own a house and I rent it out to someone who is selling crack and giving me a percentage of the proceeds, then I am going to be liable for having this business go on in my building, as is the crack dealer, as are the customers. I mean, it's there's unlawful activity all the way down, and it is a very apt kind of we always talk about domain names as real estate. Well, what are you allowing to go on your real estate? What kind of things, what kind of activities are occurring? Is there gambling going on?
But it's even worse than that, though, John, because let's just say you do hire a legit agency, right? Let's just say it's, I don't know, 99 Designs, right? Which is like a big company, right? And they have deep pockets, I would assume. So you hire them to make a logo for you, you put it on your domain name, and now you get a UDRP and you have an indemnification from 99 Designs. I don't know how that works, if they really do indemnify you, but let's just pretend. And you lose that domain name in the UDRP because of the infringement or alleged infringement. That indemnification, you're gonna, let's say that you can even go after them, but at what value? Obviously we all think it's a 7-figure name. They're like, no, this is a $50,000 name or $25,000 name or $10,000 name. So what is the value of that indemnification? Who determines what that domain is worth, right? I just think it's a big mess.
Yeah, and let's say that the contract, didn't exclude consequential damages, other kinds of secondary effects that could fall on after the copyright infringement itself. And you get a hold of them, say, hey, I'm being sued. I believe it falls under the indemnification provision. Get a hold of your insurer, fill out the form, find out what's going on here. Consequential damages of the type you're talking about, where it's like, oh, and then I lost the domain name because of it. That's something that you would want to pursue against them. A lot of times contracts specifically exclude that kind of thing. And how does the value of anything get determined in a legal dispute? You hire Andrew and you say, I need you to fluff up the value of this domain with your expert opinion, and you give him.
He's a good fluffer.
Or you hire Braden as your fluffer.
He's not such a good fluffer.
There have been
you would know, Ammar. You would know.
There have been lots of court proceedings where people in the industry have been hired by sides as experts to opine on the value of, domain names and domain name portfolios and so forth. It's fun when there's a piece of litigation and somebody shows up as an expert and you're like, who the hell is that? Because, you tend to know who the real experts are, right?
Yeah.
That's cream always rises to the top. So, hey, Braden has jumped down the rabbit hole with us. What's up? What's happening?
Howdy.
So we were.
I heard my best friend Berryhill was here, so I had to jump in.
I knew you couldn't miss out on this. So we got to introduce him to Ammar for the first time today. So that was really cool. We're playing like domain matchmakers here on DomainSherpa, and covered a lot of different topics. Man, we got into a lot of stuff, but I think we got enough time for one more, and then we're going to call it. Actually, this one came from. So what we did in advance of the show, we said, hey, give us some topics. Some people reached out. It was actually James Booth, I think, that was it James?
Andy, I think.
Andy. I think
it was Andy Booth.
Andy.
Shout out to both Andy and James. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to both those guys. And then said, what about stolen domains? And this one I think is a really good topic because I think, when we're buying domains, when anyone's buying a domain, right, it's a matter of trying to do some due diligence to understand, okay, go through Whois history and things like that we do to try to verify and validate the actual ownership. But what happens if you buy a stolen domain, right? I mean, technically that's going to, largely buyer beware, but, what does the amount of due diligence that you do matter? And how does that shake out? Or you just stuck?
Well, if you buy one, that's a great question. Yeah, you are going to end up, you may end up getting stuck. Stolen domain cases, vary from, people who the domain name was stolen, but those people are never coming back from the grave or wherever to get it, or where there's someone, going to be actively pursuing it, such as cases where the registrar account is hacked and they actually, sell the domain name to another party. I thought you were going to ask about that one specific case, which is terrible, but it brings us right back to the worst stolen domain situation I have ever seen was a guy had some pretty valuable domain names and they got stolen from his registrar account. And, we're not, whenever I talk about stolen domains, somebody says, well, how do you steal a domain? And it's like, well, but he was one of these guys who was really, really concerned about his privacy and didn't even trust Whois privacy. So if you've been using Whois privacy historically and you run around the planet saying, this is my domain and I had it for several years, look at all these records saying it belongs to, somebody in Iceland, what is that supposed to mean? So that it helps to establish, here's an objective public record at Domain Tools, or
that's another great point for for real information in your Whois.
There are court cases where Domain Tools records have been used. Archive.org has been used if you have contact information on the page. So hiding will not help you. But this guy used like a fake name. He didn't want. He had heard from someone that it was good to protect your identity with your domain names. He got advice from somewhere. So probably a domain where they said, "Oh no, don't put your name on any of it." So he had managed, from the name on the domain to the account to the emails to even the payment instruments, he had managed to so completely isolate his identity, from the domain names that it was like, how on earth, would you ever even show that these domain names were stolen from you?
Yeah.
Because you're telling me
that's a great
telling
point.
me they weren't validly registered because the registrar, agreement says that you have to maintain, valid contact information and so forth. And it's like, well, I didn't want to know who I am. It's, it is an unfortunate thing. It's understandable when it comes up in UDRPs and legal disputes. Sometimes it doesn't make people a bad person because they got, bad advice or thought that, well, I don't want to be contacted personally with letters that get sent to Ammar. And, so they do that, not, and it's not, intending to do anything bad, but, there is one client I've had for a number of years is a very private person, and he's so protective of his identity that half the time, it always looks like he's guilty of something, the way he behaves, because it's like, everything he does, if he goes out to buy French fries from a fast food restaurant, it's organized like a crack deal. It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll meet on the docks at midnight and you'll have the extra large fries, and it's like, you understand what you're doing is legal? Anyway.
So John, can I nuance the conversation a little bit? So the question came from Andy Booth, and it happens that Andy Booth and myself are probably two of the most active people in going out and shaking the 90s registrations, network solutions tree and seeing what falls out. And it also happens that, we probably bump into more of these stolen domain names than most people do. Mm-hmm. Just a couple of weeks ago, I bought dsd.com domain, the domain name dsd.com. Seemingly was going well at the beginning. Then it was like, all right, something is a little strange here. More or less, I was paying market value. Let's say market value might be 35, 40 grand in the domain name community. And I was paying, I forget, 25 or 30. Right. And I thought, okay, good deal. But, it's not way below market value. Now, ultimately, it was our good friend Stephen Lieberman, who was conducting the escrow for us. Was very helpful in us getting that domain name back to the original owner and screwing the thief. It was a fantastic outcome. But I've had other situations where I got stuck with it, and I have had other situations where it wasn't clear. And my understanding is that, like, if let's say that you are, you go through escrow.com, who is a California escrow provider. Let's say you even live in California and you buy this domain name and you truly, sincerely, you're buying it at, let's say, fair market value. You sincerely have you have no and shouldn't have any clear understanding that this is likely a stolen domain name. You pay, good money for it, and you receive the domain name, and then subsequently find out that the domain is stolen, and you're like, well, I don't want to lose $50,000 or $100,000. Where do you come out on that? Is there some jurisdictions where if you pay fair market value and you buy that domain, you have rights? Are there other jurisdictions where you're shit out of luck? How does that sort of fall?
Okay, for our next hour.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really, it can be jurisdictionally dependent, and it can be dependent on a lot of individual factors. What's interesting is that in the United States, for the sale of goods, if I personally sell you stolen goods, then the owner of those stolen goods can get them back. And because if I do not regularly deal in goods of that kind, under ordinary sales principles in the U.S., the Uniform Commercial Code enacted in every state, you obtain valid title when you buy goods from an established dealer in goods of that kind. So that the person who's been harmed, is not necessarily entitled to get the goods back, from whatever. But
in this case that I just mentioned, does escrow.com qualify? No.
They're not the dealer of the goods. They're not the dealer of the goods. Yeah. Okay. And that argument has been tried. Bona fide purchaser for value, a BFP. And every second year law student loves, in all the sales disputes, you're always trying to find out. A carnival of criminality has gone on, and you're trying to find out whether, the hero in your exam question is a bona fide purchaser of value from a dealer of goods of that kind. There are courts that do not consider domain names to be property for the purpose of application of the UCC. So that if there was, some underlying fraud involved, it's still not a valid sale. That's what happened with, I think it was express.com or a name similar to that in a court in Washington. So these things have played out, and it does depend on, exactly what happened, the skill of the advocate, the state that you're in. But I think the most famous, stolen domain case was, sex.com. And that's where, for the purpose of conversion law in California, a domain name is property. That aspect of property. Not all property has every aspect of every other property. It's sort of like, in Hinduism, gods could have, different aspects, and various ones of them may or may not manifest themselves at any particular time.
Wow. That's a way to wrap up the show. We get
I do think that's a good way to wrap it up. And but really, I want to know what's up with Braden, man. How you doing? You've had the least amount of screen time, so I'm just so how you doing?
Well, I'm just glad I was able to contribute so much to this show.
I know that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to that's my giving you an in. So do you have any feedback on anything John just said?
What did the
what did he say?
What did the Hare Krishna say to the hot dog vendor?
Make me one with everything.
That's good. That's good. Okay. Here's another one. Why didn't the Hare Krishna vacuum the stairs?
I don't know why.
He's got no attachments.
Oh, I like it.
And that's the show.
That's it. All right. Yeah. No, well, look, we covered a lot of ground. I think we did a good job today trying to, instead of just staying on one topic, we think we covered like 5, and there's still a few more, but I think we did good. John, thank you so much again, dude, for showing up and for being here with us. I want to thank all my co-hosts, especially Jen, but also the other guys, including Braden, for jumping down the rabbit hole. We'll see how many viewers we lost based on some of the inflammatory stuff from earlier on. Braden,
friends we no longer have. Goodbye.
Viewers, we just cancel countries. Like, we're not just going.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. The lower the friend counter goes, the higher the viewership goes.
Yeah, exactly. That is true. Keeping it real,
we did mention we did cover just to let Braden know what we've been doing when he wasn't here. We did cover the Epic meltdown and forgot to mention that even prominent investors lost money on Epic.
Probably good that he showed up when he did, as opposed to earlier on the call. So your name was not mentioned in any capacity. So
until now,
but now it has been. So welcome. You all right there? You under the weather a little bit?
Yeah.
There are Epic investors other than me on this show right now.
What? Who is it? Who is it?
There's a lot of investors that have been around for a long time that have Epic shares. Lots of them.
In the room with us now, it's like the end of Sixth Sense. All of a sudden it's like, wait, like take it back, or Usual Suspects. Ammar is Kaiser Soze.
Right there, you go. I'll take the Kaiser Soze reference, but
AKA
Kaiser Soze. Oh wait, I got to write it down.
There you go.
Go ahead. You actually want to say something?
But I did. We did end up with some shares through a deal a long time ago, and those shares, I didn't even know about those shares until Brian was like constantly trying to contact me, and I'm like, "Why are you trying to contact me, bro?" and then he finally said, "Oh, you're on the
cap table."
On the cap table. I'm like, "Oh, how's that?" And then
you've got thousands of tickets to the dumpster fire.
Right.
Keep them in a safe deposit box with your 8-point and U.S. government savings bonds.
Right, exactly. I think we had like 0.5% or something. But anyway, so I didn't even realize.
It's like Dumb and Dumber, real quick, where they has the IOUs and shit, the box. He's like, "Ooh, that's a good one. You want to keep that one? You want to keep that one? That one's for $20,000."
That's exactly right. Actually, yeah, Billy should show that scene. That's a good one. With the IOU.
Let's do that. Let's go ahead and do that. That's a good way to lighten the mood and call it a day here.
This was an epic show.
This was an epic show.
Oh, no.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know if it's nuclear
not sponsored
marshmallow
by
or
it.
nuclear epic fail. I don't know. We'll have to think about what we're going to call this one, Jen.
I don't know, but I do know that I am going to come up with the most ludicrous name ever to be the new domain holding company. I'm going to come up with something really good.
Do it.
All right. Yeah, let's
Might
go.
be reverse toilet bowl holding.
Reverse toilet. I like it. Reverse swirl. Reverse toilet swirl. All right. You know what? On that, we got to
I
go,
actually
guys.
think Southern Hemisphere Holdings could be interesting.
Southern,
it's
that
too-
sounds too
we
legit. That sounds like an actual company, man.
yeah,
We're trying
We
to-
only hold things. We only hold things below the hemisphere or below the Southern Hemisphere. There's got to be a way to make this ridiculous.
Reach down under.
Yeah.
We go the opposite way.
Yeah, there we go. All right. I think that's good. I think if we've got anyone who hasn't canceled us, let's just, let's hold on to them for just one more episode. And I want to say, look, thank you to everybody who joined me on the show today, especially Jen, but also to the rest of y'all. And thank you to the audience for tuning in. I hope that we got, answering some questions for y'all. I hope you all appreciate that. Like I say on every show, without you, there's no us. So thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you'll tune in next time. And, and otherwise, we're not hard to find. Let us know what you think, the good, the bad, the ugly. And we will.
Especially Ammar. He's really easy to find on Whois.
Yeah, he is. He just look up his domains. Look up his domains. But and like I say on the end of every show on this show, fair, and the Scottish phrase meaning good journey. May you travel far under fair skies and even further down deep rabbit holes. All right, thanks everybody. See you next time on Domain Sherpa. We're all roads lead to domains and then some. Peace out.